I feel privileged to extend my warm welcome to all present here for the celebration of the first of the Alumni Lecture Series of 2021. On the behalf of Alumni Associates of Dr.SSB Panjab University, I extend a sincere and warm welcome to all of you present here on this occasion of Alumni Meet, Quest for Civilized Identity, a Personal Journey.
An institute's alumni are the key to its growth, and we are very privileged to have Dr. Bansil here with us. Thank you so much, sir. And I'd like to invite Ms. Anupama Sharma to introduce us about today's theme.
Thank you, Sanya. Thank you, Preet. Respected Jay Bansil ji, one of our illustrious alumni and today's speaker, Revered Professor B.R. Sinha, Dean University Instruction, who is a source of constant motivation, unflinching support and guidance. Professor Amritpal Toor, Chairperson, Department of Dr.SSB UICET, President and Dr. Sanjeev Gupta ji, Secretary, Phuket, our distinguished alumni members, dear students, a very good evening and good morning, depending upon which part of the world you are, and very, very happy Navratras. It is a momentous occasion for all of us to welcome our alumnus as star speakers, thereby projecting them as role models for the youngsters on how hard work and commitment can help attain excellence. Alumni that have served successfully in various walks of life, either domestically or internationally, have authenticated the quality and effectiveness of education program, research, and the PU community. The more influential the position of the alumni in their work, higher the recognition that society will place on the Panjab University. Thus, they are the true champions and the torchbearers carrying forward the great legacy of this heritage university. For us, Alumni Relations are a strategic asset. Alumni is an effective role model and can be easily accepted by all the students. With the return of the alumni to support the university, they bring with them credibility and justification as a part of successful university, having breathed the same air and encountering the same challenges which are being faced by the present students. This lecture series seeks to provide a platform for experiential sharing by the alumni on multifarious aspects of personal and technical developments. Such lectures or discourses are more easily accepted as guidance and inspiration by our students and the younger alumni members. Through this way, we seek assistance in strengthening confidence, motivation, and inculcating the right culture in line with what PU intends to convey to its students. The senior alumni community that are successful can be most effective medium, not just for the university graduates, but also with the younger alumni members. When the alumni committee is successful and obtain recognition from the corporate world, industry, and the wider community, it can potentially create a stronger network as trust in the university and in turn will assist younger alumni from the university to access opportunities in improving their careers and professionalism. Our stalwarts like Dr. Bansil are real career mentors. As the competition to enter the world force is becoming more intensive, sagacious advice and hand-holding, giving valuable insights and tips can make the real impact on the career prospects of our current students. We also seek support in delivering sessions as industry experts from our alumni members who have joined today as cooperative partners in projects with our university. This will improve the development of our alma mater. And in the field of industry research, alumni can open doors for the university to enter into industry network in the spirit of collaborative working. And success in knowledge transfer will further improve the capacity and the reputation of our university. Through this platform, we also seek contribution of the alumni in providing their expertise in developing new study programs in the university or helping in reorienting the existing programs as per as the expectations of the industry, and which is the demand of the new education policy also. And under our dynamic leadership, of our Vice Chancellor, Professor Rajkumar, who is also the President of Panjab University Alumni Association, and Professor V.R. Sinha, Dean University Instructions, who is the administrative head. We are trying to connect the alumni with their roots with the renewed vigor. Panjab University Alumni Association beckons all its alumni to join the association so as to instill a feeling of bonhomie. To facilitate this process, we have created a simple mechanism through a Google form, an online payment of a meager one-time life membership of rupees 1500, which registers you as a member of both department as well as Central Punjab University Alumni Association. With this, I welcome you all to this inaugural lecture of Alumni Connect series. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anupama ma'am. No one could have started the event and explained the spirit better than you. Now, I'd like to request the chairperson of Dr.SSB UICET Punjab University, Professor Amritpal Toor, to please address the audience.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So good evening to some and good morning to some, and in fact, namaskar to all. So we a warm welcome to all of you for this evening. Though COVID has taken toll on all aspects of our lives, but in this lockdown, it has emerged as a blessing in disguise as we started our fortnightly alumni meets on virtual mode, and which has really helped us to connect with many of our alumni. So for that, I'm really thankful to our alumni, Mr. Rakesh Agarwal and Gupta. So today we are having our alumni meet, which has been organized by Panjab University Alumni Association in association with the Dr.SSB UICT, which is formerly known as DCT, because most of my alumni, they must have known it as a DCT, and Panjab University Chemical Engineering and Technology Alumni Association. So I feel delighted to welcome Professor V.R. Sinha, Dean University Instruction, on behalf of the organizing team. We are grateful, sir, that you have taken out time from your busy schedule, especially on weekend, to be part of our alumni meet. Professor Sinha is heading many departments along with being a DUI. He is a head of the Department of Urdu, Department of Guru Nanak Sikh Studies, Department of Public Administration. He is also chairperson of University Business School. So he is also a professor in University Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences and has more than 25 years of teaching experience. He has around more than 120 research papers to his credit and has guided around 18 PhD students. He has been featured amongst top 1% researchers by Thomson Reuters with most cited documents in specific field, and is also featured in world ranking of top 2% Indian scientists. We welcome you, sir, to be part of us today. And it's a pleasure to welcome our alumni and our distinguished speaker of today's evening, Dr. Jay Bansil, who is our 69 batch pass out. If I'm not wrong, he just corrected it. And who is a recognized expert in the field of energy efficient utilization of hydrocarbon resources. He is presently enjoying his fully retired life and is serving Hindu community in the US by many organizations. He has always been inspired us and guided us, and we hope that he will always be there to guide us and inspire us and help us wherever we need him. I'm really grateful to our alumni also for their support, which they have been supporting us. Sinaji, I would like to inform you here that our alumni has been helping us a lot, and many of our departmental activities are being helped by the alumni. So even we are requesting them to fund our pilot plant renovation also, and even in the classroom which we have recently made, they're also there. They had their contribution. So we are really grateful to our alumni. It's because of this group of family, we are able to do a lot of things in the department. So I extend my sincere welcome to all my alumni members, colleagues, and students who have joined us today, and hope this interaction is going to be a wonderful one. Thank you, and welcome again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'd really like to invite Professor B.R. Sinha sir to give the presidential address.
Thank you and good evening to all of you. Respected Jay Bansil ji, my alumni who have joined this particular webinar, Chairperson Professor Toor, Professor Anupama Sharma ji, the Dean, Alumni Relations, my dear faculty members, invited guests, students. Certainly, it is a very pleasant moment for me that such a senior personality who has achieved a lot in his career has joined us, and he will be sharing his words of wisdom to us as well as to our students. As we know, any institution is governed, rather you can say known by what it has developed or produced. And alumni is one of them. We always see the alumni at a very high level because they are one of the key stakeholder of any institutions. The universities which are having a great alumni relations certainly has been benefited by in many ways. The alumni who have served various domain of the academic, you can say, life as well as the other professional career, they are really helpful to our student as well as institutions. Rather, they are the ambassador of your institute. The student are greatly benefited by the presence of an alumni because they see them as their role model, and they try to learn how they have struggled and how they have reached to certain heights, which certainly is going to motivate them to also to work and perform in the similar way. Benefited greatly by the alumni presence. Alumni can be involved in many activities of the institution or department. They can always help in the syllabus development. They can always help you to develop the vision and mission of your institution. They can always be helpful in giving their expertise, wisdom, and also train the students. They can counsel the students for their career. They can help them for getting an internship. They can help them to get being absorbed in some industry. So they are the most valuable asset of any institution. And the institutions should always try to keep in touch with the alumni so that we can always be informed about the well-being as well as the professional achievements of both sides. The institution, the Panjab University, it has been established in 1882, and you can understand after that it has grown like anything. Many achievements have been in the for the Panjab University in the form of the ranking, in form of the Maka Trophy, in form of the students who have achieved in various competition and secured a very good professional life. So that is very, very satisfying to me at the same time. The alumni, they have built the institutions. I have seen many institutions where the alumni, they have a strong feeling for their institution. Take the example of the ICT, Mumbai, and the Ambanis, both the Ambanis, they studied from that particular institution. And their contribution to their alma mater is enormous. Once I visited to that ICT as an expert, and I was surprised that they placed me in the guest house of the Reliance, because that was open for the guest of the ICT as well. They are not only providing the monetary support, but they are also providing many strategic support, which I have already mentioned. It is really a pleasure to welcome Jay Bansil ji. I was listening to his enormous achievements, and certainly that is going to be a treat that we are going to enjoy this evening. And certainly it will be a motivating, a rather exemplary thing for the students to learn something from his achievements and his dedication for the profession. So once again, I welcome all of you, and I congratulate both the Department of Chemical Engineering and the Dean Alumni Relation Office, especially the Toor ma'am and the Antma Sharma ma'am. I have seen both of them, they have a tremendous synergy. And certainly this synergy is always positive one, and that is culminating in many, many good events like this one. So with these words, I once again welcome all the alumni, all the students, all the faculty members, all the ladies and gentlemen who has joined this evening. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for your presidential address and wise words. Now I'd like to ask Professor Ritu Gupta ma'am, PU Alumni Coordinator, to please take charge.
Thank you, Preet. Greetings to everyone. Namaskar, Abhinandan. It's my proud privilege that on such a big and a gracious event, I've been told to speak few words about Dr. Jay Bansil. Dr. Jay Bansil is a recognized expert in the field of energy efficient utilization of hydrocarbon resources. His most recent appointment was a distinguished fellow at the Argonne National Laboratory in Chicago, where he advised the Argonne scientists as well as the US Department of Energy on fuel efficient transportation technologies. Prior to this, Dr. Bansil worked with a global petrochemical company for over 38 years, and in 2014, he took retirement as the Chief Scientific Officer and the Global Product Development Advisor. He has a prized possession of over 24 patents, including one which was nominated for the Most Valuable Patent Award. Dr. Bansil has published widely and has been a keynote speaker at several international conferences. Now fully retired from his professional life, he shares his time between family and service of the Hindu community through organizations like World Hindu Council of America. Very recently, he has been instrumental in organizing 2 highly successful conferences for the Hindu American community. To name these conferences, one of them was Threads Conference in Boston in November 2019, and another was Reflections at 50, a virtual conference in September 2020. Presently, Dr. Bansil is serving as a member of the Executive Board as well as the Vice President of Education for the World Hindu Council of America. Sir, Dr. Bansil, we are indeed grateful to you for being with us on this virtual platform of our Department Alumni Program, the first program of Alumni Connect series of Panjab University. Having you here with us is like adding another feather to the cap. I request you to kindly share your golden words with our august audience today evening and enrich us with your experience. Dr. Bansil, please.
Mute and share.
Yes, thank you for those kind words. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
All right, wonderful.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here, for sharing your valuable time with me. I hope we spend it usefully, and you find what I have to say of interest to you. I have, Anupamaji and I have been communicating back and forth now for several months, as a matter of fact. And, finally, we settled on this date for this webinar. And quite frankly, if we hadn't really committed, things would have been very, very difficult for me because I got extremely busy with organizing. See, October is a very busy, month. It's obviously festive season, as you all know. And this year, for the first time ever, we declared October as the Hindu Heritage Month in US and Canada. And I'm actually leading that effort. So it just got very busy, but anyway, managed to find some time to put a few slides for you together, and hopefully you'll find them of interest. So let me share my my screen with you. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Hello, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir. Yes.
I'll go in.
It is.
Okay, I'll go into presentation mode. Okay. So I've titled my talk as Quest for Civilizational Identity and a Personal Journey. Now, why I call it personal journey, and it definitely has been a personal journey for me that lasted, essentially all my adult life, and it continues on even today. I have a feeling many of you in the audience have had similar journeys, probably have traveled similar roads, if not identical roads. So we shall see. Towards the end, we'll compare notes and see if others have had similar experiences and have to do something similar. So let me start with a bit of a background. So I graduated from the department. We simply used to call the department back then. Now it's a pretty long moniker, so I'm still not used to it. But I graduated in 1968, and within 2 or 3 months of that, I left India for Canada. So I landed in Canada in September of 1968. Exactly a month shy of my 21st birthday. So, pretty 21-year-old lad is not particularly mature, probably hasn't seen much of the world and hasn't thought about a lot of things other than, his education, the courses and the examinations and all that stuff. And being dumped into an alien culture at that age can be quite a humbling, but also educational experience. So, there are questions that I had to address being in a very different society. All of a sudden, I had to answer questions about my civilization. Who was I? Why was it? Why was I there?
Sorry to disturb you, sir. Sir, can you be a little louder? Like, can you increase the volume of your mic?
Okay, all right. Is it any better? Let me put it on.
Yeah, if you can put the headphones on.
All right. Yeah, actually, let's see.
Because when it's recorded, it's like the voice.
Is this any better?
Yes, sir. It's better.
Yeah, now it is better. Thank you. Yeah, it is better now.
Sorry
you can
about
keep
that.
the mic a little closer, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the best I think I'm going to be able to do. But just let me know if you run into issues with audibility. So as I was saying, at the age of 21, I found myself in an alien culture, a very different kind of society, very different kind of thinking, different civilizational background. Sorry. And I had to certainly answer questions about who was I, why was I there, what did I believe in, what was my faith system, what was my value system, things that I hadn't thought much about all these years as a student. And in particular, the issues that were always very pinching to me was what was our contribution to the world. and how does it compare with the other societies? And unfortunately, there were also some very humiliating questions about, the poverty, the illiteracy, beggars and starving children, and they had all sorts of strange ideas about India. It felt like there were, they thought there were elephants walking in the streets everywhere, and snake charmers everywhere, that sort of thing. So that was the kind of environment I was thrown in at the age of 21. Now, of course, I wasn't the only one. There were a lot of students from India who would come, same year, and there've been number of them the previous years. I think they were all being asked similar questions and encountering similar situations, and I'm sure they all developed their own ways of dealing with it. But I was still learning how to deal with, this very strange kind of environment and some very embarrassing questions. Now, the other issue was, my own internal conflict. The internal conflict was about the ground reality of India that I had left in, 1968, versus the grand narrative that we had grown up, hearing and, believing in, and so on and so forth throughout the school years. So the ground reality back then, and things have changed somewhat, but probably not a heck of a lot, was that, we were seeing a lot of poverty, and, there still is a lot of poverty. Back then, there was a lot of scarcity of everyday necessities, scarcity of professional jobs. And anytime you talk about quality, it meant it had to be imported. All the major scientific discoveries were always attributed to some non-Indian, Western names. And of course, pretty much all the textbooks that we had read in college certainly were by non-Indians. I think there may have been one or two math books that were written by Indians, but the rest of them were all by the Westerners. And of course, advanced education. I was here for advanced education. Clearly, you had to go abroad to get advanced education. So that was the ground reality. And the grand narrative was, we were hearing all these terms. We were Jagat Guru, we were, Golden Sparrow, Sone ki Chidiya, and all that. Those terms we grew up believing in. So clearly, those two images were not jiving. Its question was, internal conflict was, have we been lied to, all these years about our civilizational identity, who we were, what we achieved, what we gave to the world? Or was there something else going on? So it started me on a lifelong journey to find out the truth about ourselves, truth about myself, truth about my background, my heritage, my civilization. Now, that said, I'm not, as you know, I'm a chemical engineer by training. I'm not a historian. I never read history from an analytical perspective. So it was a foreign territory for me in so many ways. But to find truth about who we were back when, obviously I had to wade very deep into some very ancient history. Now, the way the history was taught to us back then, and I don't know if things have changed, was it was a very mind-numbing subject. You were told to cram certain dates, certain people, and then spit them out on the examination paper at the right time. I remember reading some very funny kind of comical and stupid kind of information. I remember reading about this king in Gujarat who ate 35 kilos of food every day. I mean, I don't know why that made the history books. I still don't know to this day. So we had this kind of silly, things that were being taught to us in history. There was hardly anything analytical thought that was given, in history books. So, excuse me. So I started looking into this area, and slowly but surely, I gained some competency to reading, old history books, translations by others, and the first bit of information that came my way was a statement in a book by this fellow Pliny the Elder. He was he lived around the turn of the millennia, around the start of the Common Era, and he was a Roman author and a general. So he wrote this book called Natural History, and there are these three statements that I picked from that book. It says the Roman women are too fond of Indian luxury goods. Sorry, I don't want to get in trouble with the ladies. This is not my words; these are Pliny's words. So forgive me for being the messenger. The second statement he made was, India is a sink for world's gold. The third statement he made was, or that I picked up, was in no year does India absorb less than 50 million sesterces of our empire's wealth. Now, this sesterces apparently is some sort of a Roman coin, the value of which I don't know, but it sounds like a lot of wealth that is being transferred every year from Rome to Indian economy at the height of Roman Empire's. That was the zenith of Roman Empire. So something is going on here. There is a balance of payment issue in favor of India in a big way, and Romans are complaining about it. Then I came across this fellow Vespasian. He was a Roman emperor, lived around the same time, and he tried to introduce partial ban on Indian goods. He was not successful in doing it. He had to withdraw it. But the point is, there is something going on here. The Romans are complaining about balance of payments. This guy tried to stop the trade. You don't do that unless you're really hurting badly. So India must have been producing things that the world wanted in a very bad way. All right. So let's fast forward to the 15th century. Towards the end of the 15th century. There was a desperate search for the sea route to India. I'm sure everyone has read about Christopher Columbus. In 1492, he set off to find India by sea route. But before, he's Italian. He went to all sorts of dukes in Italy to find funding for his project, to find the route to India, and they all refused because it was a very risky venture. It was an expensive and risky venture. He went to Portugal, couldn't get any support. He finally went to Spain, and the Queen of Spain finally gave him a lot of money, built 3 ships for him, more than 100 crew, money for the crew, money for all the supplies for a long period of time. Why would she? My question was, why is this guy risking his life of a lot of people? And why is the Queen spending so much money unless there is a huge return at the end of this? And this is a hugely risky venture. You never know what the outcome is going to be. Of course, this guy never found India. He landed someplace in modern day Dominican Republic, and he kept lying to himself that he had landed in India for a number of years. But the point is, there were some people who were willing to put that kind of money behind his project. Then, of course, we know the story of Vasco da Gama. He ultimately, in 1498, he did find a way to India. He landed in Calicut, and the rest is, I guess, known history. But it raises the question, why were these people so desperate to find a sea route to India? And the answer I found was in the history, in the history and geography of the Middle East. So this is the Middle East. This is, I guess, modern day Persia, Azerbaijan, Persia, Over here we have the Syrian territory, and this area is called Anatolia. It's actually modern-day Turkey, and then you go into the Balkans, and finally the Western Europe over here, Italy here, and then all the Western Europe. And all the trade that takes place between India and Western Europe takes place through this area. Now, and this is a thin piece of land here. It's separated by the Bosphorus Sea, and today there is a bridge on it. I guess back then there were probably boats, but that's where all the trade was going on between India and the Western world. And what happened was in 1453, the Ottoman Empire captured this area, the Anatolia, and they kicked all the Westerners, the Christians out, and they levied heavy tax on Indian goods. So, and that prompted the search for sea route to circumvent the trade restrictions on Indian goods. So here, these people are going, out of their way, spending a lot of money looking for way to go get to India. It must have been a very compelling trade for some reason. Now, I don't know what the trade was. All the history books keep talking about spices, and I've traveled a lot of Europe, and frankly, they don't use much spices. So it had to be something else, probably some manufactured goods, or possibly it could have been the herbs, the medication. Ayurveda was very advanced back then, so it could have been that. I don't have any evidence for it, but I just find it hard to believe that it was just spices that were driving all this work. Moving on, the next bit of data I came across was a report. This fellow Angus Madison, he published this report called The World Economy: Historical Perspective in 2004. This is a very thick report. I've given the reference here. You can look it up yourself. He produced it for the World Bank. So I give it, some credibility. And what he did was he looked at the economy of different countries in the world, major economies, and he looked at it as a function of time, starting with year zero. How he did it, I don't know. I'm not an economist, but I give it some credence because, World Bank, obviously he did for World Bank, so, and he's an trained economist. So I assume, it had some reliable data. And this is what I found. I pulled some data from it. I'm showing here the GDP of India as percent of the world GDP. And I'm showing the GDP here of the Western Europe, again on the same axis. So this is going from year zero of our common era to about 1600. And I'll show the rest of the data later, but let's focus on this. What I found shocking and surprising was that around year zero, according to this report, India represented 1/3 of world's economy. 1/3 of world's economy. I don't know if this is new data for a lot of you, but it certainly was new for me, and it was eye-opening and shocking. And this share of the world market for India held steady for a fairly long period of time. And even in these tumultuous times after 1000 CE, it was still fairly good. What happened after that, I'll share a little bit later. So this told me that, yeah, we had a dominant share of world's economy. All the signs, all the things, all the evidence that I've shared with you points to the fact that it was a very strong economy. Well, okay. So, you don't build a strong economy by selling, raw materials. You're not selling wheat and barley, in order to have this kind of dominant position in the world. You are selling value-added products, okay? And value-added products require huge amount of technology, so, it means we had to have been a knowledge-based economy. We must have been progenitors of fundamental knowledge in order to be able to sustain this kind of market share in the world. Okay, I will also tell you for comparison, at the peak, United States had only about 25% of the world economy. It slipped a little bit, but so India's economy, market share was significantly higher than that of the US at its peak. Okay, so my conclusion from that is yes, we were rich, and it had to be a knowledge-based economy. Okay, so let's hear about what they said about knowledge. So this is Hyun Song. I think a lot of people have heard of this fellow. He was a Chinese traveler. He came to India in the 7th century. So I'm from memory, I think around 630, and he was in India for about 10 years. He attended Nalanda University, and he writes this about Nalanda. He says Nalanda University had 10,000 students, 100 lecture rooms, 6 libraries, great libraries, 6 immense blocks of dormitories, 4 stories high. And that is a huge university. And then he goes on to say, of those from abroad who wished to enter the school, only 2 or 3 out of 10 succeeded. So the entrance rate or the acceptance rate was 20–30%. You know, you have to ask what happened to the other students who came all the way from China or someplace else. Where did they go? Well, I'll try to answer that in a second. Here is another bit of information about Nalanda back then. This is a fellow named Paul Monroe. He writes this book called Encyclopedia of Education in the early part of 20th century. And he's quoting some Tibetan sources. And he says the great library of Nalanda was so huge that it was reported to have housed 9 million original manuscripts. 9 million is a big number, especially when the printing press was not around. All these are done by hand. Getting back to what happened to all those students who were not accepted by the great schools of Nalanda, Great School of Nalanda. Well, I started looking for what were other universities. I mean, everyone has heard of Takshila, everyone's heard of Nalanda, of course, but I found literally dozens of universities dotted around, you know, east to west, north to south. Takshila is started in 1700 BCE, so it's 3,800 years ago, the oldest university that known to mankind. Nalanda, we already talked about. Pushpagiri, Sharda in Kashmir, Vallabhi in Gujarat, Bihar, and this Vikramasila, and this in Odisha, and dozens of more. So, you know, that many universities with huge libraries, with huge buildings, they must have been teaching something good. Let's see what they were. Let's see some other data about the Indian education system. Now we fast forward to the early 1800s. I came across this book by Dharampal, The Beautiful Tree. He published it in 1983. And I have, you know, a bit of a diversion here. When I started on this journey, I decided I'm going to rely only on the Western sources, because a lot of people, including ourselves, unfortunately, you know, put less credence on Indian sources. So I thought I would rely mostly on non-Indian sources, but of course Dharampal is Indian. However, he was reporting the data from the British colonial records. So what did he say? What did he say in this book that British colonial records were talking about? This also came as a shock to me. He says, according to the British India records, mass education in early 1800s was more advanced and widespread in India compared to England. More widespread, more advanced in number of schools, number of students, duration in school, quality of teachers, and so on and so forth. So, needless to say, I didn't believe him. I tried to verify from his references that he had quoted, and they all matched. So I actually downloaded this book, the third report of the state of education in Bengal by this fellow William Adams. And it says very clearly, there existed about 100,000 village schools in Bengal and Bihar around 1830s. Keep this figure 1930 in mind because it'll come in handy a little bit later on. This fellow Thomas Munro says every village had a school. Then we have this fellow Leitner, and he says the spread of education in Punjab around 1850 was of similar extent. So, given all this, I believe what this guy is saying. Education in India had to be better by all these, all this evidence. Okay. So then now we are in the age of internet, and it's become easier for us to sit and do a lot of research without trying too hard. So just try to find out how many Sanskrit manuscripts are there in the world. And I went to Microsoft Bing and I just typed how many Sanskrit manuscripts are there in the world. Very simple. You can do it yourself. And with a lot of verbiage, it says there are 30 million Sanskrit manuscripts, around 7 million of which are preserved in India itself. Actually, the number is larger. So 30 million manuscripts, handwritten manuscripts, that is a lot of knowledge. Then I only changed from Sanskrit to Greek and Latin in the next search. And you can do it yourself as well. And it came up with, it gave some numbers, broke it down between Greek and Latin. These are the ancient languages of Europe. And there are some other languages, Aramaic and some of these Slavic languages. And the total number adds up to about 25,000. 25,000 to 30 million. That's a ratio of 125. The storehouse of knowledge of India, ancient India, 125 times that of Europe. That is an amazing observation, amazing piece of data. I didn't believe it. So then I found this project that is going on called Namami Project, the National Manuscripts Mission. And I have the reference here. You can look it up yourself. And it says they have already documented 42 lakhs, right here. So 4.2 million manuscripts they have documented, and they have actually in hand more than 10 million manuscripts. So 10 million manuscripts in hand, there are probably many still scattered around the country in private hands. A lot of them went to Europe. So I started believing that 30 million figure. Okay, so that's tremendous amount of knowledge. Question is, what were they writing about? Anytime you talk to, particularly, I guess our, younger generation, you talk about Sanskrit, books, and you talk about these old people writing some stuff, 1,000 years or 2,000 years ago in Sanskrit. And the first thing they think is, well, they're probably writing some shlokas to please the gods. How many shlokas can they write to please the gods, for God's sakes? They were probably quite pleased themselves, drinking all that somras. So we didn't need to please them that much. They must have been doing something else. So let me just give you an example. This is a statement that I'd like you to read. The area of the diagonal of a rectangle produced by itself equals both the areas produced separately by its two sides. Now, anyone with a high school education would recognize this as Pythagoras' theorem. Well, it is not. It is actually English translation of a sutra, Bodhayana Sutra, that was written in 800 BC. That is 400 years before Pythagoras was actually born. So how did Pythagoras get hold of it? And how did he call it his own? I found this reference President John Adams was president of the United States in the 1800s, early 1800s. He writes this letter to Thomas Jefferson, another political leader in the United States. And it says, Pythagoras passed 20 years in his travels in India. So he was traveling around the world and spent 20 years here in India. And these sublime doctrines Pythagoras learned in India. So he picked it up, he just put his name on it, taking someone else's paper, put your name on it, and hope that no one would notice. That is the kind of game that was going on. At least that's my guess. So then, there is this whole business of India gave zero to the world. Well, a lot of times when people say that, they really mean India gave nothing to the world. So let's see if that's true. I came across Aryabhata's work. He lived around the 5th century, turn of the 5th century. And I came across this statement. The starry vault is fixed. He's talking about the sky, the stars. It is the earth which, moving on its own axis, seems to cause the rising and the setting of the planets and stars. He's talking about the rotation of the earth around its axis that causes day and night to take place. Now, this phenomenon actually Galileo discovered in 1600s, and he spent the rest of his life under house arrest for it because it was against the doctrine of the Catholic Church. And Catholic Church kept on insisting that he was wrong for the next 359 years. Finally, in 1992, the Catholic Church agreed that, okay, well, maybe he was right. So that's just a bit of a funny bit I thought you might enjoy. And of course, Aryabhata also gave the concept zero to the world, a concept which actually is as important as the invention of wheel for mankind. And why do I think that? Listen to these people. Albert Einstein says, we owe a lot to the Indians who taught us how to count, without which no worthwhile scientific discovery could have been made. Then we have Fibonacci. All of you have heard of Fibonacci numbers, Fibonacci series, well-known thing. He wrote this book in 12th century called Libra Abaci, the Book of Calculations. And in it he writes, in this book, I have established the entire doctrine of numbers according to the method of Indians, a method I have adopted as it is the most effective. The last bit, Will Durant, he's an American historian. He writes, India was the motherland of much of our mathematics. So, you know what? We gave a little bit more than zero to the world. And how much more? This is just tip of the iceberg. I found a lot of these names doing a seminal work in fundamental mathematics going back, thousands of years. You take Pingal in 2nd century BC, he's talking about binary numbers, not in those words, but he's developing binary mathematics. Varamir in the 6th century is working on planetary motions, eclipses. He's an architect. In the 10th century, you have Nagarjuna working on metallurgy, alloys. Complex mathematics being developed in the 9th century by Mahavira. Aryabhata in the 10th century, believe it or not, he developed detailed sine tables. First of all, why would you develop sine tables if you are not, using, let's say, to navigate across the seas? Yeah, those come in very handy in, in navigation by the position of the stars. And they were picked up by the Christian missionaries in, when they came to India and Goa and so on and so forth. They took it back and they did not, using modern calculation methods, they did not find even an iota of difference between those and modern calculations. So these are mostly mathematics. I haven't even talked about the work of Charak in pharmacopoeia, work of Sushruta, and many more. So it really gave me a pretty good idea that, yeah, we were the knowledge producers and we really were the teachers of the world back then. Okay, so what happened to it all? That's the $64 question. What happened to all that material wealth? What happened to all that seminal knowledge that we were producing? So you've seen this graph before, going from 0 to 1600 CE, and this is the Islamic period. The Islamic marauders were coming and looting and killing and doing all sorts of nasty stuff. But after a period of time, I mean, they settled in India, so there was a distribution of wealth issue, of course, more money in their hands, but the total amount of wealth in the country stayed in the country. So as a fraction of the world GDP, it didn't go down tremendously. And of course, Europe was coming up as, they were coming out of their funk, and USA was still not there. Finally, we look at what happened after 1700. Now, this is a little bit of an expanded scale, so be careful when you read it. This is the British period, 1600 to mid-1900s, when they finally left us alone in 1947. India's share of the GDP went down from, it was around 25% when they started out, down to around 3% when they left. They completely sucked us dry. And of course, the wealth of Europe kept going up. And of course, America was, starting to come up as well. From 25% to 3%, that is a highway robbery of the highest order. And by some estimates, they took out $45 trillion out of the Indian economy. $45 trillion. Now, to give you a reference, India's economy today is around maybe 3 trillion, a little bit less than 3. US economy is about 22 trillion. The world economy is around 84 trillion. So just imagine this amount of wealth that they took out from India and took back to England. No wonder India was poor when they left it. And I'll tell you a little bit about illiteracy in a second. So when I meet someone who is praising the British period, I keep hearing things about, well, they gave us the railway, and I just laugh. It's so comical. It's like a thief coming to your house, stealing everything that you have, and then you get up in the morning and see that he left the ladder, and you say, wow, great, left the ladder. That is the kind of nonsense we hear about what they did, what they left in India. Now, let's talk about destruction of the intellectual wealth. First of all, most of you know about what happened in Nalanda. In 1293, Bakhtiar Khilji, this barbarian, he burned the library down. He killed all the teachers. He burned the library down to cinders. This is a book written by some fellow Minhas Isiraz, and Major Raverty actually translated this book. I haven't read it, but I picked up this quote from internet, from this book. It says the burning of the library continued for several months, and smoke from the burning manuscripts hung for days like a dark pall. Earlier you saw 9 million books in the library. It took a long time for them to be destroyed, but they ultimately were destroyed. Just imagine the amount of knowledge that got destroyed. Then we have people like James Mill. You know, he was a British historian, and he became a functionary in the British, you know, colonial system. And he writes this kind of stuff about us and about, you know, our knowledge system. He says Hindus are barbaric, savage, wild, vague, and I won't go through the entire thing, imbecile, and in the end, he says hardly different from monkeys. Then you have, remember in 1830, the British agents are writing that this Indian system of knowledge was superior to that of England. And here is Thomas Macaulay, the Minister of Education for India in the British Parliament. He enacts a British Education Act in 1835. And he replaces the Indian system with the English way of teaching, which was up by their own reports was inferior. And he says this about the Indian knowledge system. He says a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India. He's talking about 30 million books. Amazing he had the gall to say it. I won't read through this thing, but you know, bottom line is they were the British colonists were basically denigrating our knowledge system. They were criticizing our teachers. They were criticizing our intellectuals, who then, of course, went underground, and knowledge production basically went on hold. And we got onto the British teaching system, and the result is where we are today. So, so this is, I'm coming kind of to the end of my talk, but you know, one question that may come up is, why am I talking about something that happened 2,000 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or even 500 years ago? I mean, that's long gone. We have other problems in modern world. Let's talk about what is happening today. I mean, that's partially true, but I would argue that no society can really rise to its full potential without knowing its history, without having a great regard for history and being proud of what their ancestors had done. The other part I would say is, let's forget about what happened 500 years ago. Let's look at what happened over the last 200 years. Let's look at what happened over the last 100 years, even 50 years. And let me tell you, I've studied this subject a great deal, and I ended up actually writing a book on it. We are in the throes of publishing it as we speak, and hopefully we will be able to launch in the next 3 months. The book is called Sutra: How Hindu Threads Are Transforming the Fabric of America. We've kind of focused on America because, well, you know, I live in America, and I want. But you know what we said there applies to most of the Western world. It's a book with my co-author Kalyan Viswanath, and it talks about the amount of knowledge that has been transferring from the east to the west over the last 200 years. Over the last 50 years, tremendous amount of knowledge has been transferred. And I'll just let you. I'll read this quote for you from the book. It says, thus, the relationship between the West and Hindu thought continues to be trapped in a paradigm of appropriation/denigration. On the one hand, the Western researchers continue to take freely from Hindu texts, which have become like an open book library of ideas without acknowledging the source. And on the other hand, they continue to paint Hindu civilization as backward, primitive, and a threat to the world. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you all. I hope I didn't put you to sleep. Now, I think I acquired enough knowledge to be able to hold my own in any conversation with with the Westerners about what my civilizational achievement has been, what my ancestry has been, what my heritage is. But so I no longer have to hang my head in shame when I'm talking to a Westerner. But I still find opportunities to hang my head in shame, and that happens when I find a high school student in India who cannot count to 100 in Hindi. And I've met young mothers who take pride in saying their child is poor in Hindi. मेरे बच्चे की हिंदी कमजोर है. So that is when I hang my head in shame now. With that, I'll close. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, take any remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We are very grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experiences with us. Thank you for sharing your story. Since we are entering the new growth phase on our campus and our lives, your guidance is very timely. It has surely made us realize that all things are possible if we try hard enough.
What I'd like to know is, was any of the information I presented new to anyone here?
Pardon, sir?
Actually, no. I mean, Dr. Bansal, a lot of it, I think a lot of us know. But yes, I think that data was incredibly powerful, and I think, I mean, you quoted specific references, and that just highlights it's how the journey actually tracked. So that was very powerful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So apart from the wealth and the knowledge, I think the cultural erosion which has been during these years, that was also
Absolutely, absolutely. There was really a cottage industry in Europe that started towards the end of the 18th century. That it was called back then, I guess it was called or the Oriental Studies, and then it turned into something else, and then it became the Western Indology. And their stock and trade was to take our books, take our literature, take our scriptures, interpret them from the Western lens, and then tell us what it meant, what we were supposed to, how we were supposed to interpret our own literature. I took a course in German Indology, and the basic methodology was to take our scriptures like Mahabharata and Gita, and tell us, well, this portion is added later on. This portion is added later on. The original is only this much. Out of the 100,000 shlokas, there was one fellow, he said, only about 25,000 are original, rest is garbage. And number of research. So that kind of stuff was going on for 150, 200 years almost. And denigration of our intellectual class. I mean, it's they call them the Brahmins, the trinical Brahmins, and all that. All that negative, denigrating narrative had a very, very bad effect on our intellectual class. They simply, I mean, in order for them to survive, they had to fall in line, with the Western, I mean, they had to toe the Western line. And, quite frankly, it takes 3 generations to forget, your heritage. It takes 3 generations.
Dr. Bansal, can I ask you a question, right? Obviously, I mean, we were, India was one of the most, like the richest, most powerful intellectually, a nation with incredible abundance. Yet, I mean, it got looted, it could not, like prevent all of that happening. One would have thought if you are the richest nation in the world, you would actually end up colonizing the world, but the reverse actually happened. And, it almost reminds me of, I mean, the Nokia's, which was like this big, cell phone company, dominated the world market. And in the last, as the company got sold, the CEO of Nokia said, we didn't do anything wrong, but somehow he cried actually, and he said, somehow we lost. So is there any learning, like, why this really happened, right? Because we had all the means, right? Whether it was knowledge, whether it was wealth, money, all of it, right? And yet we got pillaged.
Yeah, it's a it's a conundrum. One of the obvious answers is that think of who actually invaded and took over. These were people, they were barbarians. They had the only thing they had was a superior military structure, a superior fighting power. So it seems to me that first thing you have to do is develop. If you're not able to defend yourself, no one's going to defend you. So developing yourself militarily has to be a top priority for any nation in order to survive. This is a dog-eat-dog world. Let's not kid ourselves. We talk about ethics and morals and things like that, but at the end of the day, looting, robbing, killing, all that is the fundamental strategy that goes on in the world today. So you have to develop strength to defend yourself, number one. Without that, nothing matters.
So is that, was that our kind of, falling, that we did everything else, but did not focus on, empowering ourselves militarily? And obviously, if you have this massive pot of gold and you're sitting in the market, right? And everybody would want to pounce on it unless you have the right protection.
Yeah, that certainly it seems like that's part of it. Of course, in the 15th century, the gunpowder became, that fell in Turkish hands, and that ultimately, sort of became the dominant factor in the Mughals coming to India, taking over. So that obviously is a technological superiority at that time. But prior to that, we've been subject to this from the 8th, 7th century onwards, from Muhammad bin Qasim coming to Sindh and all that. So I think it was probably we were just not paying attention to the dangers from the outside, and not building.
I think we were divided. We were in small units. It was like we were not a very big unit as such one. That I think that was another. They were easily able to break us because there were small units which they could overpower it. If we would have a unit one only, then it would have not been possible.
Yeah, that's that's something you learn in history books all the time. It's we were fighting among ourselves and all that stuff. Sorry, someone else wanted to say something.
Mr. Bansal, Mr. Bansal, can I?
Yeah, some of your voice is breaking up, unfortunately.
Mr. Bansal, may I ask you one question?
Please do.
I just want to know 2 or 3 inferences which you may draw from the vast knowledge of history which you have created for yourself, which can help India to regain part of its lost glory. 2 or 3 inferences.
That's a tall order. When I look at Indians succeeding in the world today, We found our voice. When we are given the freedom to create, we know how to create. Okay, so it is basically letting people be themselves. Ultimately, giving them the freedom to create. I mean, people call it capitalistic system, if you like. Um, it seems to work. So that is one thing that I certainly have learned. When people are working for selfish reasons, they have every reason to succeed. When they're trying to work for society as a whole, that's a very amorphous kind of an objective. It sounds good on paper, but the model does not work. When you're working for yourself, you want to do better than better, and that's how creativity ultimately flourishes. That is one thing that I have certainly observed. And of course, you have to be strong in order to defend yourself. Thirdly, I believe in today's world, we are living in a world where it's the battle of the narratives. You have to have a strong voice. You cannot simply, say, okay, let them say what they want to say. You have to, stand up for yourself and hit them back. I think China is a great example of that. They do not take any nonsense from the West. If West says X, they give it back 2 times X. So, and India for the longest time has kind of been taking it on the chin. That's something that the Western world got used to. India's being a supplicant on the world stage. Things are changing, but I think you just have to get lot stronger and give back what more than what you receive. I think you have to win the battle of the narratives. Otherwise, we will always be, looked upon as some inferior people doing something out there in third world.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you very much. If I continue my thought over to it, that doesn't matter if the manuscripts are lost, doesn't matter if the library was burnt. As they say, the lighter part of it is, as they say, the gene cannot be killed. It cannot be changed. Can it not be a matter of inspiration for us to say that we are superior? We were superior, we are superior, and if we are superior, that is the energy, that is the inspiration, and that is the spirit which can take us back to the same glory. May not be in a very near future if I see India 100 years down the line.
Yeah, Rakeshji, that was the whole point of my talk.
Yes.
It was the whole point of my talk, to try and show us the mirror, who we really are.
Yeah.
And I mean, you carry a lot of this knowledge in your head. You've read it in schools, and you may have read it on your own. But I just wanted to put it together in one place with some solid evidence behind it, so that it is actually credible story rather than just loose talk. The thing is, my problem is I see that we're still hugely colonized, mentally colonized. Our intellectuals, particularly in the humanities and social sciences, they are still regurgitating the story of the West. And until we get hold of that narrative and start replanting with the Indian narrative based on Indian history, based on Indian traditions, based on Indian data, I don't think you can, you can survive, listen, you can continue to survive, you continue to, chug away, but in order to gain that, that real potential, you have to have narrative based on Indian traditions and not on the Western traditions. I live in the West. It might sound funny to you, coming that from me, but this is the sum total of my life's journey. I have come to respect the culture that I come from, the value system that I come from, the reason why Indian community Hindus are this successful in the society. Do you know that the Hindu Americans are the highest earners in this country. The average household income of Hindus is $135,000 a year. The average household income of average American is around 57. Okay, why are we that successful? There is a value system that we brought with us. Having a stable family system is very, very important. Respect for education is very, very important. Reverence for teacher and education, excuse me, that we brought with us as a value system is extremely important. I mean, how do you tell your child, children, they want to have fun, but unless you're able to tell your child, hey, sit down, education is important, sit down and learn your stuff. And you can only do that when you have a stable family system where a child listens to the parents. Okay, that's the secret of success for us here.
Really, really.
Yeah, it's really as simple as that. There's no, we're obviously not racially superior. We don't have a superior DNA. We're just any ordinary human beings, but it is the family system. It's the reverence for education. And all the other good stuff that comes with it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bansal. Really, it is enlightening.
I really hope our more students must have attended it, because it was really mesmerizing, sir.
Yeah, I just believe that, obviously sense of pride is incredibly important, but, I think one clear thing was, as technology was evolving, while we continued focusing on a lot of things, but, we lost our path on technology, which suddenly became incredibly important. And when I see some of our recent resurgence, as India is again, I see resurging, our ability to leverage, and move ahead in the fields of technology is really helping again India research, right? And I think that's our redemption. That's the redemption also of nations, because who are leading these knowledge industries. And I get sometimes so surprised, right, when I look at medical implants. Like 5-gram implant or a 20-gram implant would end up, you're selling that for maybe 10,000 times the price of that metal that it is, right? And all of that, the 10,000 multiple is nothing but knowledge that comes into those implants. And sometimes, right, if you go to any of the hospitals, or other technology, industries, other places, is, all of those are, being imported from all over the world, right? And why can't you do it yourself? Or what is the value of harvesting that? And imagine how much dollars it can contribute to your own GDP. So I think as a large nation, so many people, as one of the biggest consuming nation, I think that's our, that's really our redemption.
Yeah, well, listen, technology development, knowledge development will come when you free people to do it, when you give the freedom to create. Okay, even when you don't have resources, huge amount of resources, people will find resources as long as they feel they're going to be rewarded at the end of the day. Okay, right. So and then thirst for knowledge, and that only comes from family life. That comes from home. if you are not giving kids the right kind of sanskars, right kind of value system, they're going to go off in all different directions and actually not acquire that knowledge. So it comes back to those fundamental principles. Eventually,
That's well said.
Eventually technology, knowledge, and all that stuff had developed. You just had to create the environment in the home system. It starts with home.
That's well said. I mean, the very fact that we revere our gurus, right? Teachers, education is, so much revered, right? And within the family system, and I mean, that becomes a big aspirational thing for people, right?
I kid you not when I say I really feel ashamed when I run into a high school student from India and says he cannot count to 100 in Hindi. It is, I mean, I have run into people like that. Okay. Now they are not getting good value system at home. Okay. Let's not let's not kid ourselves. They're not getting good, and when a mother says my kid, बच्चे की हिंदी कमजोर है, and she takes pride in saying that is a problem. Anyway, I'll stop there.
I think cultural evasion is much more than the money or the manuscripts or whatever which has been robbed off from India. The cultural linkage and the cultural heritage robbery is the biggest. Thank you very much.
That's exactly my point. It is the most valuable resource we have in our society. It has to be revived, refurbished, used to maximum extent. That is how I think society is going to go forward and achieve its full potential.
May I say something, Anupama, if you have the time?
Please.
Mr. Bansal, I've heard you through and through, and I felt at this point I must make this interjection that at this point of time, with the national education policy focusing on education in the Indian tradition, there's a huge effort going on for, let's say, developing a curriculum as per how mathematics was taught in earlier times. इसमें सवा का ढाई का पहाड़ा भी होता था. So
I remember that very well, and I can still recite it, I think.
we have learned that in our village school when we were kids of class 1 or maybe
like
class 2.
My father knows it, and he calculates so fast, like 0.75, 1.5, 1.25. They remember all the tables.
And I run into kids here who cannot actually make the change for $5. You buy something and it's like $4.25. They have to do it on the machine to figure out how much change to give you back.
Normally it happens in Western world. Normally it happens.
Possibly. Anyway, please complete your thought.
Yeah, the point I'm making is that it is almost an uphill task to convince the teachers and students the value of the Indian tradition of education. We are so much entrenched in that mental slavery of the Western knowledge, superiority of the Western knowledge, or the dressing, or migrating to foreign shores, that the actual value, like the way you have shared your experience, the Indian students, when they actually have to talk about their own culture, it is at that time that they call back home, that they want to know more. But those who are in the schools now, it is a big challenge. Even though a lot of effort is being made to create the curriculum which will serve as an eye opener, the way your lecture today has opened eyes of so many students, us listeners. I'm a student of education, so I could trace the history of education along with you quite well. But at the same time, when it comes to education in the Indian tradition, भारतीय परंपरा में शिक्षा, उसका curriculum बनाना ही इतना मुश्किल है क्योंकि at some point there are people who are very well versed with it, but bringing it into the mainstream is a tedious uphill task because of the mental blocks. It is like we have that very vague word, saffronization of education. I don't know why we are so averse to it. When the way you articulated it, it really shows you the mirror, right? So we need more lectures like yours for school children and school students as well. You know, Anupama, if you can take this to a larger platform, it will be much more worthwhile.
Yeah,
where
I was
you can
trying
convince both.
yeah. I was just I would take permission from sir if we can put this lecture on YouTube, because
Sure, I'll be here. Sure, no problem at all. My pleasure. We see some, next generation of ours here in the audience. Can we hear from them what they, how they feel about what we talked, in the last hour or so?
I think that's a very best, the right thing to do. Yeah. Any one of the students, please.
Please.
There are a lot of them in the audience. Yes. Yeah. Yes, anyone who wants to comment about it, or because I saw.
So put up on their viewpoints, please.
Yeah, don't be shy. No one's going to mark you for it.
It was actually a very nice and interactive session. I mean, it's not every day that so many intellectuals are in a meeting and they are telling us things. We feel really, there were so many things in the presentation that we didn't really know about, like the Pythagoras theorem and how it was actually discovered 400 years before Pythagoras was born. So we feel really honored that there was someone to tell us about these things, and the lecture was absolutely worth it. And we really hope that more of these lectures are coming. And thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. I'm glad you found it useful. Anyone else? Sorry, I don't want to keep you any longer. I mean, it's obviously it's night there, and you have other things to do. But
we really look forward to reading your book once it comes out.
Thank you. Yeah, it's in the process of I've approached some publication houses. We're just negotiating the terms and all that. Yeah, it should come out in hopefully next 2-3 months. Well, yeah, sure. Thank you. So I think on that note, again, thank you so much for sharing your time with me. And I certainly enjoyed interacting with you. It's, I wasn't here to teach you chemical engineering. You have a lot more, competent people in the audience who do that on a daily basis. So I just, took something that was completely off a tangent, and hopefully it was useful. Thank you again.
So after so many years, we have heard something which was really of it was of our interest. Very, 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 very different from what we are used to listen lectures, but this was so different.
Yeah, well, you see, it came from they say necessity is the mother of invention. In my case, I just felt compelled to be able to answer questions, these very difficult questions for myself. I didn't want to kind of give sort of stupid answers. It's easy to kind of blow things off and say, yeah, we were this great, we were that great. And inside feeling, hey, I don't know what we were. I didn't want to feel that way. I wanted to really have some solid data behind me. So yeah, it was actually a very educational and rewarding journey for me. And I'm glad I was able to share it with you.
But you linked those dots very nicely.
Thanks.
And Thanks. At the end, you have left a lot of things to ponder upon.
Sorry?
You have left a lot of things to think us on, like a lot of things to ponder upon. It was not the end, actually.
That is the beauty.
Yes.
The best point was the family values are the most important thing which we should have, and I think our younger generation, if they understand that, that is a very most important thing out of the whole. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, world is moving in very different directions these days. There's so much.
We are losing family values actually.
Yeah, there's so much garbage that's out there that can is distracting our children. How you pull them back from all that is a monumental task. I don't envy the task of young parents today, to be honest. But it's your job. You have to do it. That's not something anyone can help you in.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you so much. I think we can
So
call
we
it an
can
evening.
formal vote of thanks. Rakeshji will, sir, please, he will try to sum up the things and propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anupama, for providing me this very satisfying opportunity to sum up such a huge ocean of knowledge which has been thrown open before us, and we have been made to now think, and think. He has put a few dots in line, but the last dots, as Dr. Anupama said, are so many now that each one would be thinking different onto it and would lead it to a situation which Mr. Bansal wanted to share with us, that it is the values that we carry to US, whosoever is going to US or Western world, which make them a successful Indian there and prove that they can earn 1,35,000 US dollars average against $55,000 an American or a Western professional earns. Before I sum up, I would say a few words which Dr. Anupama started with. Yes, alumni is a non-tangible asset to any educational institute. And we are glad, we are happy that the small journey which we as alumni of DCT started is now rooting up to form a huge shadow full of tree. It is really a treat to our eternal self, which Mr. Bansal have brought before us. I can visualize that Professor Sinha, how Professor Sinha is feeling satisfied when he is in the group of alumni. Once the alumni, he knows, he understands that alumni is a treasurer of information, alumni is a treasurer of resources, alumni is a treasurer of inspiration which it can give to the institute to create a brand image. We always has been feeling that this Panjab University and Department of Chemical Engineering is undersold to the world. We have much more. If we see Mr. Bansal, the alumni, what a huge resource of information, what a huge gathering he has created in the form of knowledge, going way back to the start of the era to the present world. Not taking much of time because it is already 9:20. So I thank you, Mr. Bansal, for sparing your time and sharing your bit of information. As I understand, you must be having huge knowledge, and I would request you to kindly share your book with us as and when it is published, and I wish that it gets published the soonest, because otherwise the society will be deprived of that source of big knowledge. Of course, Columbus was a businessman. We can now feel, as a since after this education, I entered into business, so I understand why a person works. It is only some reward, and that is why he worked and he traveled for years together, that the reward was India. Thank you very much for gluing us for 1.5 hours through your well-lit lecture. Thank you very much, Dr. Anupama. Thank you very much, Panjab University alumni, that you provided us this opportunity, that we could meet people, we could know people, we could attend to the interactive session, which was really useful, helpful, and certainly will be a non-tangible asset with all of us and with the Panjab University. Saluting to my gurus, saluting to my institute, I bid goodbye to all of you and say good night, Shubh Ratri. भगवान सबको स्वस्थ रखे, भगवान सबको मंगलमय रखे. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
Thank you, sir, and wish you all like happy Dashera, happy Diwali, because a lot of festivals are coming. So wish you all the best.
Rightly said. October is a heritage month.
October is Hindu Heritage Month, and
Hindu heritage.
That's my other job. I have to attend to pretty soon.
You have really opened our eyes. We in India cannot think that October is a Hindu heritage month or a Indian heritage month, but you sitting in Western world, maybe 15,000 miles away from here, is thinking on those terms and is knitting that society, that diaspora into a fabric that will really create value for this nation. Thank you.
अभी मड़िया जी का मैसेज है कि मैं आज नवरात्रों में बिजी हूँ, मैं इसलिए ज्वाइन नहीं कर रहा.
कौन?
मड़िया जी का मैसेज आया था अभी.
अच्छा.
हाँ, मैं आज नवरात्रों में बिजी हूँ, इसलिए ज्वाइन नहीं कर रहा.
तो बंसल जी, आप उनके कान में थोड़ी सी खुजली कर दो ना.
नहीं, उसके कान में हमेशा खुजली रहती है. He's fond of ragging everyone, so I'm glad he's not here.
भाई नवरात्रों में अगर वो बिजी है, खाने के लिए भी तो टाइम निकालता है. खाना तो खाना ही नहीं नवरात्रों में. वो जो टाइम बचा है वही टाइम यहाँ लगा देता है.
I have a feeling he's boycotting my talk.
That is also a player. You see, boycotting such a knowledgeable ocean of information is also a player he is deprived of.
That's okay. I have to give him a private lecture. All right. Namaste, everyone. Good night.
Thank you so
much. Thank you very much to all. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Shubh Ratri. सबके आने वाले दिन अच्छे रहें, स्वस्थ रहें.
Thank you. Thank you, madam.
Good night to everyone. Good night.
Bye.